I haven't often looked at small form factor components, and this is something that I really want to get more into in 2025, and not just in terms of showing you these components on Amazon and showing you how they would perform at a certain price point, as I do most of the time, but also taking a look at getting some hands-on components and building a small form factor computer. Now, the reason that I think small form factor computers are getting more attractive and have been attractive for a while is, of course, the variety that it provides. Now, small form factor is SFF, and with small form factor you have to consider your motherboard size, your graphics card size, your CPU cooler size, and all of this forms a sort of a challenge for computer builders. And for us this is exciting, and in terms of how it looks, I really like the way that small form factor looks. I like the way that it takes up less space if you want to use it as a desktop computer, as a console killer computer, whatever you want to do with it. To me, this is something that looks really cool, that is functional, serves a purpose, and of course can be a multitude of things. Now, you can go with your outdated normal EATX, ATX, whatever it might be, and just, you know, put it under your desk. If it's just a plain old sound dampening case, put it on your desk. If it's a new fish tank style case, you know, have some RGB, whatever you like. And there is a place for that. I mean, I have a big ATX case on my desk, or just over there, and I do like the way that looks, but I do want to get more into building some small form factor and more non-general computers. And I think, you know, for me it would be a console equivalent computer, and I am looking forward to making that video in the next week or two. But to others it might just be something that doesn't take too much space on their desk. Whatever it might be, can be many things. So stay with me as we take a look at this one, which will be a $500 small form factor computer. And this PC will be a console style computer that will challenge some of the current generation consoles, and will be fantastic value for $500. So stay with me and let's check it out. Starting out, I have chosen to go with DDR4 AM4 for this build. Now, I have gotten a lot of comments lately saying that AM4 is outdated, it's dead, and I get where you're coming from if you think that way, and it probably is true. But the thing is, when you're building under, let's say, $800, it's very difficult to fit realistically well-performing, you know, AM5, DDR5 components into that sort of build at a price point that is not, you know, getting mid-tier. And for $500, it's not impossible, especially when you go second-hand. But when you're buying a new computer, it's very difficult to do that. And so for this one, I've chosen to go with AM4, DDR4. And in terms of gaming performance, you know, gaming graphics, it has hit a kind of a wall. And, you know, I work in the video gaming development space. I am a video game developer. Maybe at some point I'll tell you more about that on this channel. But there isn't, in the next couple of years, that much space for game graphics to grow. Right now what's happening is games are requiring more VRAM because games are becoming less optimized as the, you know, the tension grows and the need for products that are going to make money, like your Indiana Joneses, for instance, as that need sort of skyrockets because, you know, post-COVID, the demand for games have plummeted really, and the supply of games, especially on Steam, has just risen. And this isn't a conversation for this, but it's just something that I wanted to mention because I do believe that AM4 is still going to last you 4 or 5 years, and at a price point of $500, I don't think it's going to be a big problem. So this is the Gigabyte B450M. Now what makes this attractive is the fact that it has Wi-Fi included. You know, a Wi-Fi card doesn't cost all that much. It's maybe like $20, but this is a good dual band Wi-Fi that is integrated. And apart from that, for a small form factor motherboard, this also has a NVMe slot, and it has 2 full PCIe slots, which is very attractive for the price point, as well as 4 DIMM slots. And it also has a 8-pin power point for your CPU, allowing for overclockable CPUs there. And apart from that, it has a good variety of I/O with a whole bunch of USBs and, built-in sound and all of that standard stuff. And this is, of course, a B450 board. So not exactly budget, but also not approaching high end. So just sweetly in the middle there. And for me, this is just a good all-round board at a decent price, coming in at $90. Now, I'm sure you can get better deals than this, so just take a look around and see if you can find something better. You don't really need 4 DIMM slots for a build that is just for gaming. So, you also don't need 2 PCIe slots, especially with something that has Wi-Fi built in. And so just take a look at if there are any better specials, but this is a good starting point. And of course, pairing that with a Ryzen 5500, which is a 6-core 12-thread CPU. And this comes with the Stealth Killer, which is more than good enough for this CPU. The CPU is 6 cores, which is fine for gaming now, 12 threads. And, while it isn't the strongest CPU out at the moment, it is fine for playing games, and it is fine for media, entertainment, and even a bit of light productivity if that is what you want to do. But for this build, this is more of just a console killer kind of machine, something that you put next to your TV and you play games at respectable frame rates without breaking the bank. Pairing this with some cheapo RAM, it's Corsair, so that's obviously not too bad, but we are looking at Vengeance LPX DDR4 RAM. This is 3200 megahertz CL16 RAM, and so it is pretty good, coming in at $32, and you do get 16 gigs of it, which is fine for gaming, especially when you're just using a 6-core CPU. So this will be more than good enough for playing games on your TV. Pairing this, now this is where it gets difficult when you're building a small form factor PC, because there aren't that many options readily available when you're talking about small form factor graphics cards. Now, you might delve into the second-hand market and maybe get something a little bit better, maybe something like a 3070 small form factor or something like that for maybe around $250 or something. But for buying new and for having limited options, this Gigabyte 3050 is a relatively good choice. Now, this is only the 6 gigabyte variant of the card, and so you won't necessarily be playing at high settings at 2K or 4K, but for HD, medium settings, it should be okay for most games. You are going to struggle a little bit in the biggest games out there. Your Last of Us, even Red Dead Redemption takes a lot of VRAM, the new games, the Indiana Jones, all of that kind of stuff. This is not the best card out there, and it's not the best price either, but there isn't that much option when you're talking about SFF, because what else are you going to do that is readily available? An RX 6500 XT is worse than this, so there aren't that many options. But when you just want to do some light gaming on your TV, nothing too crazy, better than a Series S, not quite Series X, this will be just fine for HD gaming. You could do 2K gaming on this, on most games, medium settings. Just don't expect to turn up the textures. And we are pairing this with a cheap 512 gig NVMe drive. Now, this is only a Gen 3, but it is only $30, which is quite cheap for a 512 NVMe. And, speed-wise, it's not the fastest thing out there, but it's okay, especially when you're just going to be playing games. There's not too much to say on this. It is what it is. It's a cheapo NVMe drive, and it'll do the job for gaming. Just don't expect the fastest speeds out there. Now, the interesting thing with building SFF is, of course, the case, because there is actually a lot of variety with this. You have, I know Americans can't access them, but you have deep cool making cases that are SFF. You have Cooler Master, Corsair making some premium options. You have Inwin. You have Antec now entering that realm. You have your Fantex. You have Gomdias now do that as well, and many other. These aren't even the premium brands for the most part, so there is a lot of choice when it comes to SFF MITX PC cases now, and so you are spoiled for choice. But if you want something that you can just put next to your TV or under your cabinet, I would go something like this, something that, when you're talking about a low performance, low heat generating system like this will be fine. It doesn't really have any ventilation, but you don't really need it when you're not generating any heat. I'm sure you could put a fan on this, but this is just basically a small little black box, and it is only $37. I think it looks nice. I like a more subtle computer case. I think this looks nice. I think it would look nice next to or under a TV, and it has a decent set of clearances. You do need that SFF power supply. You can go micro ATX or mini ITX for motherboard size. Now our motherboard would fill this entire space, so you're not going to have much space left for cable management, but a build like this doesn't have many cables anyway, and it does support relatively big power supplies as far as you do not go past the width. And I'm just realizing now that this might be a full width case, which if that is the situation, if that is the case, you could just do a normal GPU, which would be better, because pairing this with something like a 3060 would make a massive difference, or even a 2070, something like that. So check what your case's width is when you buy it, and based on that determine the best graphics card for that situation. Because when it comes to small form factor graphics cards, there are only so many options, and it can be difficult to find good ones. Finally, powering our system will be the Pevia 400 watt SFF compact power supply, and these are usually quite expensive, but this one is actually relatively well priced. And this is something else that you have to consider when buying a graphics card for a case like this, because this is a small power supply that is built to fit into this space, but it doesn't necessarily have the highest wattage output, and because of that you are limited in what you can put in this, because for 400 watts you can't even run a 3060. You could probably do a 2060 base version of that, which would be good for this PC, but just make sure on that. And this is a good price, coming in at $40. We are looking at $37 for the case, we are looking at $31 for the NVMe drive, $180 for the graphics card, and again I think you can do better here. $33 for the RAM, $87 for the CPU, and this is on special, so it's quite a good price, and $90 for the motherboard. Now I think motherboard, CPU, graphics card, you can find some better options maybe, but in terms of the case and the power supply, these are some really good prices. So those are the components that I chose. Not necessarily going to be a gaming beast, so to say, but it will play games at respectable frame rates, at respectable time frames. It will feel quite smooth, and while you won't be able to set up the settings to max, you will still be able to play games at respectable frame rates, respectable frame times. It'll feel good, and you won't have too much to worry about in terms of the performance and the experience itself, as long as you are not unrealistic with your expectations. So with that said, let's see how this does, and let's see if this is worth $500. Let's do it. So how does our $500 SFF media console, small little gaming PC that you put next to your TV or your monitor, how does this perform in modern-ish games at, the price point that is $500, which is a relatively budget price point going into 2025. Well, we are in 2025, but, for this year for games, that is a modest price point for computers, especially new computers. And so let's see how it does on 1080p. Now, I'm not expecting this to destroy games, even at 1080p. I don't think you can run each game at ultra at 1080p, and at 2K I think it will struggle, especially with high VRAM requirement games. But just for a chilled, relaxing little gaming PC that you don't expect too much from, let's see how it does, and let's see if it is worth the money. So starting off here, we have Forza Horizon 5, and this, thanks to Shadow 7 for providing the video. And Forza seems to be doing quite well. It does get around an average of 58 FPS at 1080p Ultra. Now, Forza is not the hardest game to run, but it still looks good, and it's still a good result, just for the price, really. So that's a decent result. Let's see how it does in let's do Fortnite low. I think that's how most people play it anyway. So the average on Fortnite low DirectX 12 at 1080p is 163, so that's quite good. Let's see how it does at Epic. It goes down a lot to 52. Still playable, but I probably wouldn't play it like this since it is a fast-paced game. We'll take a look at God of War. God of War, not the most difficult game to run, but still a little bit demanding. Still looks very good. And this seems to do around 48 average at 1080p Ultra. So far, I must say the performance has not been bad at all. Hogwarts Legacy, another, high VRAM game. And this is where it shows you do have to play this on medium to get your 60 average. So, even so, not a bad result. 6-core CPU, 6 gigs of VRAM, and 16 gigs of RAM. Not too bad at all. And, a relatively good performance. Much higher than a Series S, but not quite PS5 or Series X. Horizon Forbidden West, the new Horizon game. This is where we struggle a little bit. 1080p medium, 40 average, still playable, but just barely. Let's take a look at... So Hellblade 2 and Starfield are difficult to run games, and Hellblade 2, 1080p low, that's the lowest you can go, and we are only getting 30 FPS. And this is what I mean with the newest of the new games. If you are looking to play, Hellblade or Helldivers or The Last of Us, or the newest games, the one that I keep forgetting that just launched, that is so graphically demanding, Indiana Jones. These games, they just probably are out of your reach if you are on a 3050. So just keep that in mind when you do look at this computer. Starfield's going to be the same. 43 average at 1080p low. This is playable, but it looks really bad, and it's not great. Last of Us, let's see how this does. This will be interesting. 1080p low, it actually does quite well, coming in at just under 60 FPS at 58 average. So this is more than playable, and you can even probably play this on medium, which is good to see. And, keeping this in mind, you can play almost any game, but not at the best settings. Red Dead Redemption, another interesting one, because we are limited in VRAM. And this has, on 1080p Ultra, you are looking at 37 FPS average. So I would probably play this on 1080p medium just because of that VRAM limitation. And this is why I say it would be much better to get a 3060 or maybe a 2060 12 gig into the system, but it is very difficult to find SFF versions of these cards. Elden Ring, that'll be okay, getting around 46 average at 1080p maximum, relatively good result there. Alan Wake 2 is going to be a difficult one, 48 average at 1080p low. And so, you can play new games, but can you play them well? Not exactly. But what you also have to consider is that these tests do not make use of DLSS or any upscaling technology. So you always have the option to play around with those and get some more performance that way. Let's take a look at a last one here, and we'll do Cyberpunk. In Cyberpunk 1080p medium, we do get 55 average, and that is actually quite a good result. So that's it for this little gaming PC. $500 doesn't stretch that far in 2025. You do have to be mindful with your purchases. What I would probably do is buy most of the components new, but look at a second-hand graphics card for around the same price, because you're going to get a much better performant one, maybe a 6600 XT or a 2060 12 gig or a 3060 if you can. Even a 12 gig 3060, would be amazing for this. But if you want to look over to ARC, the A580 is much cheaper now, and that is quite a good card, much better than this. But again, finding small form factor variants of these cards can be difficult. So either buy a case that is small form factor but still wide enough for a normal card, which is what I'm looking to do in the next video, or find a small form factor card that is small enough to fit in a case, but give up some performance in having to do that. So that's going to be about it for the video. What do you think of the PC? What would you do differently? There's always a lot of space for improvement in these videos. So let me know what you think. Did you enjoy this one? Do you like this kind of content? Let me know what you think, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.